welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your host, Buddy Sotelo Esquire, and wrestling's premier photographer, Dr. Mike Leno, and the effervescent Evan Ginsberg. Always gets a grin from him when I use that colloquialism for him. But we had a little bit of a reschedule today, so it looks like it's just the three of us, which is unusual. We don't always have.
But we have
just
breaking
us.
news. We have breaking news.
Or news that might break somebody. What is
I'm
your
gonna
breaking news?
break it because of the Netflix attempted acquisition of Warner Brothers for $93 billion. Some factors there, and the end result is if that goes through, and there's hopefully regulators that'll stop it, etc. But
Are you
anything's
kidding me? Under
possible.
the Trump era, there's no regulation of anything right now going
Well,
on.
no,
So
but right now as we speak, is a Warner Brothers movie that my grandfather was the head screenwriter on, and I don't know if I've mentioned this to Evan, Lionel Hauser, who passed before I was born, but he was the screenwriter of a ton of movies. So Christmas in Connecticut, that's playing at least 6, 7 times on Turner Classic, is airing right now as we speak. It's a Barbara Stanwyck, Sidney Greenstreet
and he
vehicle.
screenwrote that?
He wrote it. He also wrote
Wow.
Courage of Lassie, that had Elizabeth Taylor and her childhood legit shoot friend Roddy McDowall in it. He helped uh, co-write the screenplay for a Cary Grant movie where he plays an angel. Gosh, why am I spazzing on the title? I'm sorry. The Bishop's Wife, another 40s movie. So here's Casey right here. So he was a contracted, and he worked his whole lifetime, as did my grandmother, who helped him with these things, for Warner Brothers. So if the buyout with Netflix takes place of Warner Brothers, they don't want the TBS or Turner station, TNT or Turner Classic. So who knows what's going to happen with that? But if he had bought it, it wouldn't be good either for Tony Khan, because and Netflix is in bed with WWE. So that might leave him out, it's time to renew on those stations. But, like if this thing goes through, Turner Classic will be sort of adrift without any parent company, which is it's just kind of a mess.
My cable company already canceled Turner Classic. So, and here we have my pal and former opponent in the ring, Casey Wood. Thank you for joining us all the way from Oregon.
I'm having computer problems again.
Uh-oh. Well, that is
Good.
always an issue. Hopefully, we can
There you
get
go.
you somewhere here.
Casey fixed his screen.
Yeah, we get you now.
Casey, let me just quickly, and then I'll shut up. I threw in it was May of
That would be a
1992, and I
record,
worked.
by the way, on this program. At 10 minutes and you'd shut up. That would be like
Well,
that
Russ,
in the,
let me talk because you're elongating it. I threw my one and only convention, and I had studied conventions, to see the good and bad, mostly good, all the WFIA conventions, and I was a board member in the 70s for that. WFIA, would move every year, be in a different city, host city like Detroit, St. Louis. In 71, they were in my home base of Los Angeles. And each territory they would go to, sometimes the promoters would come, like Dallas 77, Fritz von Erich came and sent all of his talent. And so it was very cool. Like the 74 one, I think, was Atlanta, where all three Garvin brothers. So if people want to know a little about the background of Terry Garvin, who was involved in the Ring Boy scandals of the 90s. He was part of
I remember
that
that.
trio with Jimmy and Terry. None of them related at all biologically, but they were like a Freebirds heel faction before the Freebirds, really got to TBS. So anyway, I'll shut up. But so Evan came in like a week early to help me with the St. Louis. It was my Sam Muchnick 3-day tribute for the boys convention, and anyway, so I know you're kind of an expert, Casey, on these. But so I studied the good and bad, like John Arizzi's conventions. I was even going to ask you in advance of this. Were you at the ones that I was at, the 90, 91, 92, 93?
Yeah, I was even on some of the panels with
Oh,
all
great.
those legends, and the funniest story from those conventions, uh, the original Sheik turns up at one of them, and he kept in character to the point that he wouldn't speak to anybody, but he was sitting there signing autographs. So I got him to sign an 8x10, and I said, thank you so much. I'm a huge fan. And he just nodded and smiled at me because he couldn't break character. But and then
Oh,
they were
that's gross. There
selling
you
they
go.
were selling
But Ev,
Superstar
weren't you
Billy.
weren't you with me in the back? Oh, go ahead. Wait. So was Sheik around Superstar Graham at that thing?
It's all a blur. There were three or four of them, so I couldn't tell you which year who was with what. But so then one year they were selling Billy Graham's wrestling boots for like $75, and I thought it was like depressing, so I didn't buy it.
$75.
That would be worth a small fortune.
No
But
kidding.
yeah.
Just buying a
should
pair
have.
of wrestling boots is more than
Yeah.
$75 if no matter who owned them. But
But Evan remembers. Wait, I think Case would be blown away. Who I had as MC, lead MC was Lou Thez because it was St. Louis. Sam Munchak. We held it, and that was one of my favorite places to photograph in the '70s, ringside. And I have some great backstage stories with Bruiser Brody and cursing out Ric Flair and Ken Patera when they arrived late. They were on a Crockett private plane from Mid-Atlantic, and they got there, like minutes before they were supposed to dress and go out there. But I had Ernie Ladd, Killer Kowalski. I mean, I had like everybody who ever came into St. Louis. Ivan Koloff, WWE Center F at the time. Jack Lanza brought Bob Backlund, and gosh, there was a ton of guys. Wyndham, Rotundo, Kurt Hennig, Lanza himself, who Russ. I mean, that was the first protege of Bobby Heenan, right in St. Louis. But anyway, a lot of the legends, all the surviving families of Bobby Shane, Pat O'Connor, and others, and a ton of so they're really fun. There are some conventions, obviously, that have gone south, and one year in particular, 2007. But
we'll
anyway,
talk about that.
Russ, I'll let you take it over.
Yeah, well, Casey, have you gone to any conventions?
Not a long time.
Oh yeah. Well, even going back to
Sorry, I'm
like any were they wrestling convention or something music wise, or what kind of convention was it?
Gee, that's a good question. It's been so long. I mean, Colorful Alley, but that was a long time ago too.
Yeah, well, we've all been to Cauliflower Alley once, I think, at least. I went to the one in 2000 with you,
They're with me.
Yeah, that was crazy, by the way. That convention
That was
when we moved it to Vegas, because I was on the board through the whole '90s. But we moved it to Vegas from LA. People were kind of grumbling about that because a lot of the spouses could go to Disneyland. Red Bastien's wife Carol and Thez's wife Charlie would take all the non-wrestling people, or the people didn't want to hear us talk wrestling 24/7, to Universal Studios, which was right near. But we moved it to Vegas, and that was the one and only time a lot of guys came to where I said, and the board let me do this, I said, I want to designate a table to each of the territories. We had so many guys. We had an AWA table. We had a Dick the Bruiser WWA table. We had a Portland Don Owen territory, a Detroit Chic, Ohio for Johnny Powers. And a lot of guys came to their only CACs. So that was packed. I think was that the one where the Crusher and Bill Watts, Crusher Reggie Lasowski, before we lost him? I mean, it was packed. Pampero Firpo, that was his first of only two CACs, and Fred Curry Sr. and Jr. It was an amazing. That was a big one, but a lot of them are very big. Where we have Gorgeous George's. Oh, go ahead.
The first one I remember was in 2000, I think, at the Riviera in Vegas.
Yeah, that was the one where Jason Sanderson had just won a lottery. He was a priest, a father. He won the lottery, and he got us the night before, because we were only one night. CAC from my first one in 1987, on up, was just a one night Saturday night where we had a third wrestling honorees, third boxing, and a third movie and TV, the Reel, REEL. awards, where we had guys like Elliot Gould right at the top of the list, so I could pose Lou Thez and Hollywood from Glow with all in the same picture with Elliot Gould, a mega movie star, former husband of Barbara Streisand and stuff, or Oscar De La Hoya or Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone. We had our share of some pretty big names. Terry Moore, who used to be married to Howard Hughes, and she was in that King Kong knockoff, Mighty Joe Young.
Hey, my friend, the remake of it. My friend was the head
No,
animator of
no,
that
no. We're
movie.
we're talking the whatever it was, the 40s
Original.
Mighty
Oh, the
Joe
original
Young,
one. No,
the
I'm talking the
real
remake.
original one.
My friend from high school, who's one of modern day's great animators, did the robotics for the remake of Mighty Joe Young, and he also did Men in Black and Hellboy and a lot of other the
The
robotics in a
Hellboy
lot of modern
is
films.
Guillermo del Toro, who's a big genius of horror. And he's
Right.
got the new Frankenstein out. That's another thing that sort of bothers people about if Netflix gets a hold of Warner Brothers. It wasn't even theatrical for more than 4 or 5 days, the new Frankenstein, and boom, then it's on Netflix. So it's hurting theaters that, you know, rely on that income. And they already have taken a shit hit since COVID hit, and nobody really wants to go to the theater unless it's some big, huge
Evan does.
spectacle.
I go
Evan's
to the
like,
theater all the time. Regal
Yeah,
and
you just go when there's
but
not
you're the
people
only
there.
one in the theater, aren't you?
I go mostly during the day, and if there's a dozen people, it's a lot. It's they make their money off the food, not off those ticket sales. Unless it's a big hit, it's like a graveyard in there. I've had private screenings where I'm the only person in the theater. It's bizarre.
Yeah. No, I mean,
That's good. You can hear the dialogue, as opposed to like, when I saw the first night that E.T. opened, I couldn't hear any of the dialogue. So I went back on it earlier in a regular day, a couple of weeks later, and I could finally hear what they were saying.
I'm still bitter though that Netflix outbid me by 1 billion for Warner Brothers. My $91 billion bid just missed.
1 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's laughable that they're saying, "Oh, this is going to benefit the consumer." No, it's not. Yeah, so you'll have some more stuff to watch, but they're going to jack those rates up. In fact, I made a joke. If any of you guys know that Access, you've ever heard of Access Cable Channel? That's the one that TNA's been on. They're moving to AMC next month. But I was saying something, with them Netflix putting up 92, 93 billion for not just Warner Brothers, but all they want from the Warner Brothers Turner package is HBO and HBO Max. So they don't want TNT, they don't want TBS. So I put up some joke, and it did get some response on social media. I said something like, "Access Cable Channel speaking here. Hey, Netflix, we're available too." Because they're going to be done. Nobody's going to watch them once TNA leaves. It's just all reruns, rock interview shows that have been aired to death that are 20 years old.
Speaking of Netflix, I really want to recommend Cristela Alonso. She has a special. It's really tremendous. It's called Upper Classy, and she talks about her mother was an undocumented Mexican immigrant in the United States, and they basically squatted in a house for 7 years. And the mother did every, menial labor job to help them survive, single mom. And she was born in this country. And it's like you laugh and cry at the same time. It's very poignant. It's tremendous, tremendous comedy special, Upper Class, Cristela Alonso, and yeah, I really recommend it. And man, she doesn't hold back on ICE and Trump and the deportations. She really stands her ground. So I really recommend it, unless you're pro ICE, in which drop dead. Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you very much. So now I just wanted to circle back to the topic of Cauliflower Alley. And Casey, can you remember some of the things that you did when you went to Vegas and for Cauliflower Alley? If you can remember, that's a good point.
I did in Vegas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. I had a good time. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
remember we had that big table with Roland and a bunch of us, Modest and Morgan and whoever else was sitting there.
because
I remember a couple of very interesting things that happened. Well, three really interesting things that happened at
Oh
the
no,
convention. One was that
kayfabe.
what?
I said kayfabe.
Oh, well, no, I mean, come on. Statute of limitations is run on all this stuff now.
I'm
I mean, that was
kidding.
25 years ago. So,
Jeez.
I don't feel like I have to protect anybody's identities or anything like that. But one was that we did meet. It was cool to meet some indie. This is the first time I met anyone from any indie feds that were outside of California. And I did meet the people who were part of this Rocky Mountain Wrestling Federation. They were really cool. And I was trying to get us to do kind of an exchange where they would send wrestlers out to us and then we would send wrestlers out to them, but it never quite
Right.
materialized. That was one thing. The second thing was that I can tell it now because again, everybody has gone their separate ways, but I know that Donovan Morgan totally made out with cheerleader Melissa because I was watching those two like go into like a private corner at one of the casinos, and they were really
Sorry,
hitting it
you
off
froze up
big
there.
time.
You froze up there. What? Who?
With cheerleader Melissa,
Oh yeah, yeah.
Donovan and
that
cheerleader
was
Melissa.
before Dedridge Center, Pacifico Sports.
Yeah, she was still going out with Jason Dedrich at the time, but I think Donovan, when the cat was away,
She
when
came.
Jason
She was originally engaged to one of the Ballard twins because I saw her when she was just learning to take her first bumps at UPW in Irvine, Southern California, Orange County, Rick Bassman's gym, because that was his promotion, UPW. And that's where I saw Cena for the first time as prototype, way before he went to OVW. But a lot of guys that we had come up to APW from like 97 on, Chris Daniels, Frankie Kazarian had come up, but obviously, more so when the UPW alleged war.
Mike has frozen, which I just want to say to Casey, the wall behind you, the very bottom left-hand side, there's a small space that you didn't cover. We need you to
Yeah, exactly.
take care of that.
You need to add unless Casey's
There's a
now
what?
frozen and it's just us.
Yeah, the wall behind you at the bottom.
Yeah, you have about
left
an 8-inch square that
Yeah,
hasn't
that's
been
right.
taken up, right
you need
over.
to fill that.
Yeah, you need to add another picture of Ace Frehley.
Oh, okay. Over my head. Sorry. I'm like, what am I doing? Am I sitting wrong? Never mind.
No. He's pointing out that right there, on the side in between the drums.
There's a spot.
Yeah, there is a spot.
There's a little spot that you didn't fill.
It's getting to Evan. He can't stand seeing some blank wall in all of that. So
That's my goal for tonight. Now we're done with this. I'm gonna get right on that.
Like a picture of Mike Lano with the Valiant Brothers from '74.
there you go, from the Battle Royale, from the George Shire Battle Royale from '79 that he keeps talking about. In fact, last time we talked to you was the last day of Ace Frehley being on the planet, and if you want to mention something about Ace Frehley, we'd be happy to. Yeah, you can have a moment to expound on your love of Ace Frehley and that you often had his costume. You would dress up as Ace.
Oh yeah. I have Ace Frehley stuff everywhere. He was like my it's funny, he's a guitar player. I'm a drummer, but he was like my idol anyway. I don't know, whatever. But yeah, that was sad.
So
yeah,
Casey, I used to go see Max Roach do solo drum concerts.
Oh,
Froze up there.
You froze up. I
His
was,
connection's working okay, although Mike dropped off. So
and
I
and,
don't.
and and it dropped me off before also. I was
I
saying, Casey, you were talking about being a drummer. I used to go see Max Roach do solo drum concerts.
Oh wow.
Also, avant-garde jazz player Andrew Cyril used to do solo drum concerts. He would play everything, including the wall and the floor. These guys were out there, boy. So, but if you could hold a crowd for 50, 60 minutes solo as a drummer, yeah, Max Roach was, probably the greatest drummer of all time, if you know jazz.
Buddy Rich at all? Have you seen?
Buddy Rich was great too. Buddy Rich was a showman. He was great.
Yeah,
Yeah, he could do it all.
he really brought forward that thing that the drummer being like the focus of a band
Yeah.
as opposed to just being in the background. I think.
As a kid, my parents took me to see on one show was Buddy Rich, George Shearing, Count Basie, and Ella Fitzgerald on one show.
It's pretty legendary.
I'm always grateful to my parents because as a kid, they take me by the hand to see great jazz, great R&B. They took me to see the Spinners. The opening act was Nancy Wilson. I'm talking prime Spinners, 1975 or 6.
I was going to ask you what year was it? Geez, 75.
I was, with Felipe Wynn on lead. I'm very grateful to my parents. They had.
And I'm ungrateful to my dad because all he cared about was symphonies and orchestras and opera, and he even though his medical practice was 5 miles away from the Haight-Ashbury district, he still couldn't name a single one of the Grateful Dead songs when Jerry Garcia died. He couldn't. At least my mom, she knew Truckin'. She was like, "Oh yeah, that was the guy who did Truckin'."
Well, I grew up in a black neighborhood, weaned on R&B, jazz, and blues, so I couldn't name too much Dead myself. But what's funny is, as I've gotten older, I have a world-class venue, literally walking distance from me, Forest Hill Stadium, and I'm catching up on all these legendary rock bands that I never saw because, I just didn't grow up with any of it. So in the past few years, I saw Lynyrd Skynyrd, I saw Deep Purple, Morrissey, who was a little younger with the Smiths, guys like this. And, it's like great musicians are great musicians. If you appreciate music, the genre shouldn't matter. I saw yesterday the gospel, the Soweto Gospel Choir, this huge gospel act from Africa, and it's beautiful music, and they're doing Christmas songs.
Aren't they? Isn't the Soweto Choir the one that did the Graceland album with the?
That's Ladysmith Black.
Oh, Ladysmith Black Mambazo. That's right.
Yeah, I saw them too. They always played in America, but the greatest African act I ever saw was Fela Kuti. Oh my God, that was unbelievable.
So, Casey, how did you get into music? How did you first start learning how to drum?
There's a 3-minute delay with.
I know the dramatic pause.
Yeah, I was going to say, I heard part of your question. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, I was just wondering when you first started to drum, and what was your major influence when you first started drumming?
I saw Kiss on TV. I was 4 years old. Like, what is this?
That's how I felt when I saw George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic. They were on the same label.
I just saw like a huge row of drums. I thought that's the coolest seat.
Oh man,
I think I don't think this is working.
Yeah, Casey, we're unfortunately we're having you cut off a lot. Your connection isn't so great.
Well, so are you.
Well, yeah. Well, between me and Evan, we're fine, but your connection is not working so hot.
It always happens to me. I don't know why.
Do a drum solo, and we'll catch pieces of it. That'll solve the problem. Yeah.
Right. Well, like you'll just have to hit the drum in perfect spaces in between.
I'm not gonna wake my wife up.
Oh yeah. No, I understand. It's a little bit late to be whapping
Oh,
around the drums.
although honestly, she probably wouldn't mind. Whatever. I'm not gonna bother.
No, we don't want to disturb Kat. She's a wonderful lady, and we don't want to get
Yeah,
her
she is.
disturbed at all. She, you can use the rest, but um, one of the other interesting things about Cauliflower Alley was that I wound up having dinner and spending most of the evening with Mark Smith, Mark Bison Smith, because he didn't want to go to the clubs. And I was like, everybody, wanted to go to, at the time, what was the Rio, which now doesn't exist anymore, but they
Hmm.
all wanted to go to the club at the Rio. And Mark was like, and I was like, I don't want to go. I'm not a drinker, and those clubs just, the first thing I do when I go into a crowded club like that is I want to get the hell out of there. It's just not my kind of scene. So Mark and I went to not the Nugget. We went to on Fremont Street. Went to the Peppermill. That's right. We went to the Peppermill Casino, and Mark like blew all his money like in like 20 minutes. So he was like, he had nothing to do. So me and him sat at a table, and we probably talked till about 2 in the morning, about a million things. And, he said he as a big guy, he didn't like going into those clubs because, one, he's there barely able to move. When you're that huge, when you're 6'5" and 320 pounds, like being able to move in one of those clubs is hard. But he said that almost inevitably, when he was in those clubs, some little guy would come up to him and try to start a
Yeah.
fight to show that he could beat us. This little guy could show that he could beat up a big man. And that was something I never realized that like Mark had to deal with all the time. But people, you think when you're big and you're tough like that everyone would like, well, nobody would mess with you. But he said he got messed with a lot because
Wow.
people wanted to show how tough they were by taking on the biggest guy in the club. And he's like, I don't like
Napoleonic
going.
complex.
Because I went out with him several times and we never had a problem at all.
Good. But that was something he said he didn't like. He said people would get drunk, someone would, want to try to make
Sure.
a big deal and get
Yeah.
in his face. And, what he was saying, when you're a big guy and you get in a fight like that, even if somebody else starts it, the police show up, the first thing they're going to do is beat the hell out of him and arrest him because he's the bigger guy. They always assume the bigger guy is the aggressor in a fight. And he kind of had that curse walking around him that he was always afraid that people were going to try to start fights with him to prove they were the toughest guy in the room. And it was a really unfortunate, feeling for him. And that's why he also wasn't the kind of guy that liked to pick up chicks. He was at the time still in a committed relationship with his girlfriend, Amanda. They were together for a very long time, and he always wanted to honor her, whereas the other guys at APW were always on the prowl and out to just go crazy. It was that time in the late 90s, early 2000s where being a
Mhm.
crazy wrestler was cool. I mean, being an out of control wrestler was something that people admire. They don't admire that as much anymore, with the plane ride from hell and all the other
Oh,
things
yeah.
that Vince McMahon has done. But back in that 1999, 2000 time
I was
frame,
there.
yeah, I mean, guys were pretty nutty, and guys, when they got to a bar and
Remember,
they
I
started to
co-owned a
drink,
bar in Hayward.
yeah, absolutely. Did you go to any of those? Crazy.
Well, remember, I co-owned Sherry's off of Mission Boulevard in Hayward. So all the boys would always go there, especially after shows or after practice or whatever.
Got any crazy stories from there?
Not crazy.
He froze again.
We'd sit around and just laugh our asses off and have a drink. That was about it. It was fun.
But yeah, no, I fortunately,
I can think of a few stories, but I'll just keep that for the book.
keep it for the book, sure.
Yeah.
Evan, do you know of any like crazy like bar stories that you from hanging out with any of the wrestlers you've hung out with?
My friends, it was the opposite scenario. Johnny Valiant used to say to me, "I'm proud I never got into a bar fight." He said, "I like the fans. I had no desire to, have a fight with somebody." And Lanny Poffo said the same thing. Lanny Poffo even went so far as to say, "I don't like the word ring rat." He said these were our friends. They took care of us. They helped us survive on the road when we had nothing. And the sane ones, they're not looking to brawl and beat somebody up in a public setting. It's people are different, different types, different. Some of these guys prided themselves on being barroom brawlers, and other guys, it wasn't their thing. And Lanny went so far as saying, I'd like to go just back to my room with my money in my pocket instead of wasting it in bars and, partying with the boys. So, and he ended up financially well, unlike many of them. So, different people, different characters. The craziest story I remember was we're going to a convention in Pittsburgh, and what's her name? Blue Meanie's girlfriend.
Was that
Jasmine?
Jasmine, yeah. Jasmine, we're with her, Johnny Valiant, Blue Meanie, this indie manager who most people wouldn't know, and we're going to eat, and it's this family restaurant in Pittsburgh, not far from the convention, and Jasmine looks like a wrestling ballet. She's dressed sexy, and like everybody in the place is looking at her. And at the top of her lungs, she yells, "What the fuck are you looking at?" As we're entering like this family restaurant in Pittsburgh, and strange things happened on the road. We were in a car one day going to another convention. I forget the actress's name. It was the lead in Frankenhooker. I forget her name, but which was a horror film, which had it had some success, and she's flashing the other cars, and Johnny's like, "We're gonna get arrested." Johnny Valiant, he's like, I would stop doing that if I were you. Johnny was like a church-going guy. You'd be surprised because the Valiant brothers were so crazy in the ring. But in his own way, he was kind of straight-laced and but a funny guy. He was a funny guy. And in my book, Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets, I write a lot about Johnny Valiant. And he's right behind me, right there, the Valiant brothers.
Yes, the Valiants.
And
I noticed that.
Yeah, and if you look at that's the cover of my book, and there's stories on all of them. And speaking of porn, there's Seiko, who's a dear friend of mine, and I have a piece on Desiree Cousteau, who we went to see back in the 80s at the Pussycat Theater, and that's an interesting tale. And next to her, ironically, is John Lennon. So I tell the story in the book. December 8, 1980, I'm at the Garden.
That would be tomorrow, by the way.
Oh, there you go. So this is topical. So, and today's Pearl Harbor Day. I think somebody Pearl Harbored Mike Leno. He disappeared off the show. So December 8, 1980, I'm at the Garden. The main event is Bruno against Sergeant Slaughter. It's a rare night that Backlund's not there. He was in Japan. And maybe the only night while he was champion that Backlund wasn't there, if memory serves. And Bruno and Sergeant Slaughter, great heel back then, Slaughter. They have a bloodbath, And we walk out of the Garden, and there's this weird vibe in the air. I felt it the second I walked out of the Garden, 33rd Street and 7th, 8th Avenue, depending what side of the Garden you get out of. And there's like this murmur, like people are whispering. And I'm like, what is going on? And I walked up to an absolute stranger, and it was a guy in a suit. I remember because, you know, it's 11 o'clock at night. You know, you're safety conscious in New York. I walk up to a guy in a suit, maybe a Wall Street guy who was out or whatever. I said, what happened? He goes, John Lennon was just shot. It's the same night, December 8, 1980. And this is pre-internet, pre-cell phone, pre-everything. And by the time I got home on the subway back to Queens, which is 30, 40 minutes, he was dead. And I'll never forget. And I wasn't, again, I grew up in a black neighborhood. I wasn't the hugest Beatles fan, but I remembered feeling ashamed that it happened in New York, because he used to wear the New York t-shirt and he adopted New York as his home. And, you guys aren't from here, but the actual murder was approximately 40 blocks from Madison Square Garden, 72nd Street. The Garden's on 33rd Street. So, it really hit close to home.
I heard about it on Monday Night Football from Howard Cosell.
Yeah. Wrestling was always on Monday nights at the Garden back then. And my father, who used to take me in the 70s, he died in 1980 also. 1980 was a bad year. So,
and Reagan got elected.
Yeah. So to make a long story short, my father used to say about wrestling, he used to say anybody could go out Friday or Saturday night. The hip people go out on Monday nights. And we used to go to wrestling on Monday nights. Yeah. So, that's my John Lennon story in the book. So, that.
What is the name of the book?
Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets. And all of the people behind me, I either knew them or there was some kind of experience involving them. Nicole Bass with the Muscles, she was a dear friend of mine. I was literally at her deathbed. I was at her deathbed. We were very close. She was a neighbor. I would sit and have lunch with her all the time and book her for various events. And
how did she feel about her Howard Stern appearances? I never really.
She used to say to me, I'll tell you, she used to say to me, I love Howard. She said, and one time I was dead. She told me she was dead broke. And Howard, she said, quote, gave me $800. Now, my reaction was, this guy's making $100 million a year or whatnot. It's not all that generous, but she was grateful that the guy just gave her, not loaned her, gave her $800. And she said she didn't like to always have to be on, like the Howard Stern fans would approach her, you're a guy, aren't you? And, all of this stuff. And she said it hurt sometimes. And she would say to me, sometimes I just like to look girly, and she'd put on makeup. And it was rough. I'm at her deathbed, and she's connected with all of these tubes, and she was in a coma. She was brain dead. I shouldn't even say in a coma, brain dead. And her friends were saying to me, Evan, tell her to wake up. And I knew it was over. A tongue was hanging out of her mouth. It was horrible. Yeah, and the next morning, I was literally at a deathbed. The next morning, they pulled the plug, and that was it. But I had booked, as associate producer on The Wrestler, I had booked her to be in The Wrestler, and she had pancreatitis, and she couldn't make it. She was so sick. And Aronofsky's like, where is she? I said, Darren, she's really sick. She couldn't make it. So she was supposed to be in the Wrestler, and they had a guy,
I didn't know.
Paul E. Normus, who big muscle guy, wrestler, big steroid guy, and not long after the Wrestler, he was 33 years old. Notice I said was. He's telling me, we're going back and forth, instant messenger. He says to me, I'm not feeling too well lately. Next thing you know, he was dead. Big steroid guy. And yeah, I when the wrestlers do the, it's not steroids. And whatever it is, it's not helping because a lot of wrestlers who are on it have died. So not that I'm a doctor, but Nicole Bass is gone. Melissa Coates, who's in my book, she's gone.
Superstar Billy Graham.
Superstar Billy Graham, obviously, who suffered terribly. I knew Billy, and we did 350 days with Billy. Yeah, Billy Graham in his prime, boy. For those young fans who do they just punched and kicked back then, charisma off the charts. It was unbelievable. Heel champion Billy Graham, 1977. He was unbelievable, the charisma.
Now I know, Casey, you never did steroids. You don't look.
Obviously not.
But did anyone ever offer them to you?
Absolutely.
Wow. And why didn't you choose to do them?
Yeah. I'm not gonna. Yeah, I was offered. This will help your career, kind of thing. Go in the locker room and shoot you in the butt with a needle. I'm like, I'm cool. I'm fine with being my own size. I'm not the biggest guy in the world. I'm not going to be the biggest guy in the world. I just want to go out and perform and get over as best I can.
When I was younger, I was offered it because I was doing a lot of weightlifting in high school, and someone wanted me to join the football team as tight end, and they said, and you got to do steroids and it'll make you bigger, make you stronger. I was like, oh, that sounds great, sign me up. And they said, so when am I going to give you the shot? I'm like, a shot? I thought, oh, okay, well, if it's a pill or it's a cream, fine, I'll do it. But instead, once they said no, it's a shot, I'm like, no, I'm not interested.
I've actually seen it happen, literally, with a needle, and I've seen it. I'm like, I don't want that.
Yeah, no, it's and obviously the people who did it back in the early 2000s are paying a price. Although Arnold Schwarzenegger did plenty of steroids, and
he had heart surgery.
Yeah, well, but he probably would. I mean, he hasn't had the same kind of big problems that like a guy like Superstar Billy Graham has had or anything like that. But and that Sylvester Stallone did a bunch of them, and a lot of the other guys a lot of football players, obviously from the 80s, and baseball players. So we don't know. We might see in a few years like a number of them, hit the wall and start dying in droves if what everyone says about steroids turns out to be true. So, but I don't think it's gone away though. I mean, I think that there's guys that find ways to do you think like the WWE wellness policy really exists to get people on steroids, or is it one of those things that's a convenient excuse to get rid of people, to say, oh yeah, well, they've tested positive?
I've got a little of both.
Yeah, because I don't think that they really I mean, a guy like Triple H, for example. I mean, he was on steroids from I think day one, and a guy like Shawn Michaels, when he came back from being out for so long, you could tell that he really, his body was much more toned and pumped up than it was when he was with the Rockers,
right.
Or when he was with the AWA. I remember watching him in the AWA, and I mean, his body got so chiseled in such a short period of time. The British Bulldog is another good example, and Dino Bravo. You know, those guys were all normal sized, and they turned into these gargantuan hulks.
Well, Dynamite Kid.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's
Yeah.
just, all these guys unfortunately have Dino Bravo, steroids didn't kill him, but I probably would have
Well,
gotten
yeah.
to him before the
But a lot of these guys, like Dino Bravo, who I saw as a face in the 70s and then as a bloated, steroided up heel 10 years later, they weren't as good. They were muscle bound. Scott Steiner wasn't as good once he was like gigantic. He was much better, with the Steiner brothers. It's like you look better, but are you performing better? A lot of these guys, I would say no. They're it impedes their movement. It's just I'm not making a blanket statement, but for many of them, yeah, big difference in the quality of the matches.
Well, they get injured a lot
Sure.
in different spots because certain parts of their body are highly developed, but other parts aren't. Their knees are. You can do all the steroids you want. It's not going to help your knees and your ACL and your tendons get any stronger. Your muscles get big, but the connective tissues, and the joints can't deal with it so often. And I mean, that's kind of what happened with superstar Billy Graham. I mean, his joints started dissolving away basically because of all the steroids.
But if you read some of the mega doses that these guys did, like Road Warrior Hawk and Billy Graham, I mean, too much of anything isn't good for you. You eat too much ice cream, it'll kill you. You know what I'm saying? It's so. Tiger Khan, 33 years old, man, one of my dearest friends, steroids. He did steroids. The average 33-year-old isn't going to have a heart attack. So I'm not the pro steroid guy. I understand, people have injuries and it helps some of them, but
rarely is it done under doctor's supervision. When you deal with the steroids just for injuries, it's a very limited amount of time, and you have a doctor prescribe everything to you. When you're just buying it from the guy next to you in the locker room, that's a different story. And
That's a different story. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're doing it just to get big and there's no end to it, that's the big problem, is that when it's under doctor supervision, it's got a limited window. But when you do it, for being big,
Sure.
You just want to be big. As soon as you stop taking them, you stop being big. And we've seen lots of guys, who are huge, ballooned up, when they stopped doing steroids. It's like Hawk, when he came back to the WWE, and he obviously wasn't doing steroids, he just looked flat. He looked really, had no intensity, and unfortunately, he'd really given so much to steroids that I don't think there's any way for him to perform without them.
and he died relatively young too. He was
Yeah,
late 50,
yeah.
60, maybe 60. I met him, very pleasant, normal guy.
Animal too, Animal too did.
I meant Animal. Yeah, Animal was. Hawk was only 47. Animal was maybe 58, 59, something.
Yeah,
like
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Hawk was 47 when he passed?
47.
Yeah,
47.
yeah. It's just
Wow, I didn't know he was that young.
Oh yeah.
too many, too young. I
I
hate
mean, there's
to.
a mile long line of these guys that passed in their 20s, 30s, 40s. So the spin that steroids are harmless, I just don't believe it. There's also the combination of things.
I think that's a big problem too. They're always very,
steroids.
very few wrestlers just do steroids. They're usually combining it with the painkillers and alcohol, and those three things will end your life quickly.
Roddy Piper said for years he wasn't going to live to a ripe old age, and he was right. And he was 61, and that's like dog years for the lifestyle he led. In 350 days, Greg Valentine's in it, and Greg says, I go up and down the road with Piper doing 8 balls of coke. You know, it's in
Yeah.
the movie. I'm not breaking any news. You know.
No, he says it in his shoot interviews.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, we're at the hour, so I really appreciate you, taking your Sunday off. I'm sorry we didn't have our planned guest, but Casey, you're always welcome to be on the show. Hopefully we can get a better signal connection for you next time. But
I know.
that's
And thank you
always
for
that's
always
always
inviting me. I always appreciate it. Thank you very much. It's always fun to
See-
sit and just BS about anything, wrestling related or whatever.
Just hearing every third word of yours throughout this hour, it was great. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, look, technical difficulties are always. I don't run the internet. I wish I could give a perfect connection to everybody.
I don't know. You're the tech guy. 2 weeks in a row, Teams bounced me off, and Leno either was abducted by ICE or was bumped off by Teams also, because he just disappeared 20 minutes in.
He's just gone.
Yeah, well, he can only usually talk for half an hour anyway, so he probably just said, "Oh, okay, well,
He does the opening monologue like in Macbeth, and then he disappears.
Exactly, only to reappear a week later. Anyway, next week we'll have another great guest. We're going to try to get Sheldon Goldberg on here. Who's going through his own health things. We'll have even more health related stuff. But Evan, you want to plug your book and your page?
Sure, Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets, available on Amazon, or you could message me for a signed copy. Also, Evan Ginsberg's Old School Wrestling Memories. Check out 350 Days. Check out Wrestling Then and Now with Killer Kowalski and Nikolai Volkov, etc. So on my homepage, Evan Ginsberg. Follow me.
Don't forget about the grab bags for Christmas.
Yeah, we got grab bags. We got signed 8x10s. Message me. Legendary wrestlers, legendary actors, reasonable, cheap stocking stuffers and whatnot.
And don't forget copies of the book, because I think that's a great stocking stuffer too for people that have everything. You probably don't have Evan's book, so
You want, and if you wonder, what's that, Casey?
I'm going to check your book out. I'm saying.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Enjoy. And if you're wondering why Richard Pryor is next to Jimmy Valiant and Bruno Sammartino and John Lennon, you'd have to read the book.
Absolutely. It all connects somehow.
That's right. They all do, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us this week, and we'll see everyone next week. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Casey.